And welcome to a special edition of Hannity. Our own pollster, Frank Luntz, is the author of the book Win, and he's the man we turn to find out what the American people really want from our elected leaders. Now, for the next hour, he's going to be bringing voters and American leaders together face to face for an incredibly lively debate and letting us see how Americans react in real time to what their representatives have to say. Frank, take it over.
Tonight, 6 of the most powerful Americans face some of the toughest questions from the most important audience, you, the American people. Now, you've seen this before. We're going to use these patented Luntz global dials. The higher that they turn their dial, the more favorable the reaction. But if they dial it down, that's negative. We're going to find out which of our elected officials, senators, congressmen, and one of the most powerful business leaders in America, who's got the words that work and who's got the answers that the American people are looking for. And we begin with the Arizona senator, the Republican whip, and a member of the commission that is trying to find a way to reach agreement with Barack Obama. Senator Kyl, Republican, conservative. I want you to react to him. Grab your dials. Set the stage for us. Can we reach an agreement? And why should we trust the Republican approach to the budget?
Well, we've got a big problem, and a lot of politicians are not being straight with the American people. Our government is broke. We've got a $14 trillion debt. We have to borrow 42 cents of every dollar that the federal government spends from somebody. Unemployment is now over 9% again. House values have gone down more than they did during the Great Depression. You know that gas is almost $4 a gallon. The economy's in the tank. There are some people who believe that we need to borrow and tax and spend even more money, that the first big stimulus bill did not spend enough. I disagree with that. I think the way to prosperity is to stop wasteful Washington spending. We can't afford any more of this borrowing, and even if we could, it's not government that's going to put the American people back to work. Private businesses create the jobs. And the more money the government takes in taxes and borrowing, the less there is for private businesses to hire and invest.
Chris, what's your reaction?
Well, I think what he's saying is right on. I mean, it's true that, granted, if you are a corporation or if you are contributing to the revenue of the country, but there's just so much spending. I mean, it's ridiculous, all the different things. You said 42 cents needs to be borrowed on every dollar that we spend. There's way too much money that's going out that's unnecessary.
Stephen, what's your reaction?
I think you just have to flat out cut. Cut, cut, cut.
David, what's your reaction?
I think you have to cut, but I also think it's important to understand where tax revenues really go up, and that's when we keep the money in the people's hands who earn it. Government doesn't create wealth. It's the people.
Evelyn.
I think all night tonight, we get it. We know what the problem is. The thing that still is not clear to me is what is the strategy? We keep talking about what we have to do, but we haven't addressed the fact that we have no means of accomplishing that goal with no strategy in place.
And that's the purpose of this. Everybody go to 50. She's asked a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Senator, what's the strategy? Everybody react.
2 things. First of all, the economy has to get better. People, families, businesses have to grow. That will not only make us all better, but will actually produce more wealth for the federal government, because even at the same tax rates, if you have more income, then the federal government collects more in taxes. So we need to work together to help our economy recover so that we can all do better, and ironically, the government will do better then too. So it will have more money then to spend on the things that we want.
Always the ones that have to work together. It's obvious the Democrats had 2 years and they screwed everything up. It's like leaving the kids home alone with all the booze. Now hopefully the grown-ups are home. Why are we always compromising? Why do we always have to start from that point? The Americans had a statement.
That's just not true. They've had 8 years.
Because the years before that, we had to work together.
Bush had 8
So it's
years.
hand in hand.
I really get frustrated with that when Bush had 8 years to deal with the economy, and the Republicans spent, and now all of a sudden, on the Democrats.
I'm so tired of, I'm so tired of hearing they did this, they did that. Stop that they did this. Let's fix it. Let's get together and say, okay, who cares who did it? Let's fix it. I'm tired of this.
On the topic of solutions, Senator, you mentioned joblessness, and I really appreciate that. Let me ask you a question. This is probably an area where we have a philosophical disagreement, but I'd love to get your opinion. If we want people to have jobs, why don't we give them jobs like we did during the Great Depression? Let's stop giving tax cuts to big companies that are just keeping the money for themselves. Corporations just increase their profit margin and build jobs overseas.
Everybody
if we want
grab
people
your
to have
dials.
jobs in the United States,
You know the
let's
question.
give them jobs repairing our infrastructure.
One of my points is the government, our government, your government needs to listen more to you. This is very interesting to me. I mean, I'll try to answer your question here, but I think the first thing the government has to do is listen to the people. Now, we're not always going to agree. And when I say we have to work together, the fact is we have a Republican House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic President. If each one of us just go to our corner and say, we're not going to work together, we know what we want to do, nothing will get done. That's why we're in the room trying to work out solutions to these problems.
So, by the way, you're dialing incredibly high, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm running out of time. Do you think that you will get to that point where there will be an agreement? Notice the pause. Notice, hey,
I'm an optimist by nature, and I think we've got to find a solution. But the reason I paused the way I did is that, first of all, we have to get it all out of our systems. We have to make our case. We have to say we're right and you're wrong. That's the process we've been in so far. There comes a point in any kind of, whether it's in your family discussions or business or wherever, where you finally have to get over the making of the points, and now let's see if we can find common ground. We're in the process now of trying to find that common ground.
I want to thank you, Senator Kyl, for your willingness to speak to the American people, take their questions and their challenges. I recognize the frustration, and I recognize the frustration. And we come back, you're going to hear the Democratic perspective, and let's see if we get those same kind of sighs out of them.
And thanks, Frank. And coming up, Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill tries to sell the Democratic perspective. And then later, GOP Senators Jim DeMint and Rand Paul and one of America's most famous business leaders take America's toughest questions head on. Straight ahead.